All right, Coach Don Decker on the collective today. We'll let him get into himself a little bit in a minute and kind of hear who he is. Other than that, who do we got on the call today? We got Justin Schwind. I'm the Human Performance Advisor. I'm a KBR contractor with the 58 Sal. And we have Darius Dupree. He is the head strength coach at the 58 Sal. He's also a KBR contractor. Other than that, we're fortunate enough to have Don Decker on today. He is a legend in the field. I'll say, I remember when I was a little pissant GA, and he was at Arkansas, and he was at Subway. I said, "Hey, Coach, can I sit down and just talk to you for a minute?" And I was just a guy at Mississippi State, and just asked him a couple questions on path and where I need to go. So definitely looked up to him and followed him over the years. Very fortunate to have him on today. Thanks, Coach, for coming on. If you could give me 2.5 minutes of you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's hard to believe that this is 31 years in the business, 22 years. I had the opportunity now to be a head strength coach. The time that I spent at the University of Arkansas and Ole Miss and being in the SEC, looking back on it, just phenomenal experience. And, sometimes I think it's hard for us to really, truly take in the magnitude sometimes of the moments that we're dealing with as coaches. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy in that, in the sense that, hey, let's celebrate this till midnight tonight, and then we're on to the next one, and stopping and reflecting and just having an opportunity, obviously all of us during this time of pandemic, to slow life down a little bit and think. And in preparation for today, visiting with y'all, just thinking about, what I've been able to experience. But I want to say this about my time here. This is starting year 8 at New Mexico State University. And the last two of the last 3 years, we've had guys drafted from here. This year we had a running back, Jason Huntley, drafted in the 5th round. And, when I was at Arkansas and Ole Miss, had the opportunity to coach 8 first-round draft picks. Very, very proud to just say that I was a part of that process. But being a part of the 2 kids that were drafted over the last 3 years, being a part of that process, knowing that, we haven't signed a kid at New Mexico State University that visited another university in the last 3 years. So given guys who come here with that chip on their shoulder, kind of a, last chance, last stop, a lot of kids that were not being recruited by Division I universities wasn't given the opportunity to fulfill that part of their career. But then we come along and we give them that chance. Most of the kids that we recruit, majority of their offers are 1AA offers. And obviously, no matter what level you play at in college football, you always think that you can play at the highest level. Every D3 kid that has the aspirations and goals and dreams of playing in the NFL thinks they have just as good a chance as anybody else. And so, but being a part of that, being a part of guys who maybe have felt like they've gotten looked past and missed, and really pour your life into them, and they pour their life into you, and then to talk to them after they get drafted. I tell you, that it's as precious as anything that I experienced in my career, and really, really excited and proud to be a part of New Mexico State University, and having this opportunity here today to talk a little bit about, my past and the things that I've learned. And we always continue learning. That's what I think is a great thing about strength and conditioning coaches, is they all have the same heart, and that is that they want to help people be great, and they are tireless in their pursuit of that, developing themselves and developing others.
Thanks, Coach. So real quick, this is a layered question here. So, peel as many layers off as you want as you answer them. But what motivates you as a coach? And when I say that question, you already said the kind of where you were in your career and where you are now and how you're kind of driven. But what motivates you now compared to when you first started? In my opinion, kind of an example I always use is when when I first started, I was full of piss and vinegar. So there wasn't, my everyday was just being there. Like that was it. And obviously that changes over time, at least it has for me. And then also, how do you motivate your staff, and has that changed throughout your career?
Yeah. For me, I think it's, I think one of the most powerful things that we're given as human beings is the power of choice. And I think that every coach hopes that whoever's under their leadership, makes the choice that they want to be the best that they can be. We say, make the choice that they want to be great. And great's defined in so many different ways. But to say that they want to be the best they can be, I think, really makes a statement about where that person wants to go and what's in that person's heart. So what motivates me, and I think, honestly, every strength coach I've ever heard answer this question, jumps into this thought process, is that I give them every tool that they need to make their choice matter. When they chose, I want to be the best I can be, then I don't want to be the rate limiting factor of them not accomplishing that. In my recruiting talk, I vow to them, that I will leave no stone unturned to help them achieve their goals and dreams, especially when I'm talking to male athletes. We don't sit around and hold hands and have kumbaya moments, but the reality of it is that, that we've got goals and dreams, and we lay up at night thinking about what we want to accomplish and what we want to do. And everybody on this call today could state and name the top 3 or 4 people that really invested in their life to help them do that, to empower them to be the best that they could be. And so I want to make, what motivates me is I don't want to, when given that chance, when given that opportunity for that individual, I don't want to let them down. I don't, specifically with a football player, I don't ever want them to go to a combine prep place and come back and say, Coach, if you just showed us this, or if you just told us this, or if you we could have jumped this or run this or accomplished. I never want that. And I make it a point to go talk to my guys when they come back for pro day and wherever they've trained. Hey, what'd you learn? Is there something that, I need to be doing better? Is there something I need to know that has changed, in terms of combine prep and in terms of getting a guy ready and all that kind of stuff? Because I just don't want to fall asleep at the wheel on my watch. So what motivates me is making sure they have a plan and the guidance and support, to accomplish being the best they can be. And then the other thing that I think motivates not just athletes, but everybody is everybody wants to matter. Everybody wants to be valued, and in coaching nowadays, with social media, salaries are talked about all the time. I mean, such and such got a raise. Here's how many strength coaches are making $500,000 and more, and all those kind of things. And don't get me wrong. I'm glad I get a paycheck, and I'm happy I get a paycheck, that I get paid to do this. And the more money you can make as a strength and conditioning coach, the more power to you, because you earn every dime. But I know for strength and conditioning coaches, that's not the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is the reward that you receive, all right, from helping people get where they want to get to. The Holy Grail is helping them achieve something that they may not have been able to achieve if you wouldn't have been one spoke on the wheel, helping that wheel turn. I think that's the Holy Grail. What really rewards us, what really measures our worth and value, is accomplishing those things. I mentioned that we had a kid drafted this year, Jason Huntley, in the 5th round, and every strength coach has those stories of, he came in at 152 pounds, left at 192 pounds, vertical 39 inches, standing long jump 11. I mean, all those different kind of measurables that happen on those pro days that we brag about. We brag about them because it's a part of our story. And I know we're going to talk about this later in this segment, but the reason we talk about it is because it helps to develop and build trust in your other athletes to say, man, if you'll give yourself to this, if you'll really invest this, you won't miss out, and I make a statement that, missing out on a financial opportunity in life is one thing, they kind of come and go, but missing out on making a difference in somebody's life, that's a whole nother story. Those are hard to get over when you look in the mirror and know you could have done more to help that individual. That that you didn't do your best in that given situation, whether it be how you deal with them or the plan that you developed and those kind of things. So, those are the things that motivate me, in terms of my staff, giving them the opportunity and empowering them to be a part of that. John Maxwell says that there's 5 levels of leadership, and the 5th level of leadership is leaders who develop leaders who develop leaders. And a lot of people don't get there because when you're 2 people removed from what's actually happening, there's a great chance that you're not going to get the pat on the back and the accolades and hey, this guy did a great job and they're mentioning your name. If you're developing a leader who then develops a leader, well, the person you developed and the person they developed are the people that are going to receive the accolades and the pats on the back and, hey, you did a great job and all that kind of stuff. Chances are you're not going to get that. And a lot of leaders aren't, secure enough in themselves to allow that to happen because they think that, hey, I'm going to get replaced. But anybody that really understands leadership understands that started somewhere. And so if you're the guy that can't allow that to happen, then you're robbing them of the very thing that you said that matters to you. I mean, yes, we said a paycheck definitely matters, but that worth and value is helping somebody get where they want to go and achieve what they want to achieve. And if you don't allow your staff to have that ownership, when I first got the job at Arkansas, I went from being an assistant to being a head guy. And I didn't want the sports that I had dealt with as an assistant to feel like, well, he's too big time for us now. Now he's the head guy. He's going, and so I stayed in charge of some of those other sports. And my top assistant came to me one day and he said, Coach, when are you going to let us do what you did? When are you going to give us the opportunity to do what you did? And I was like, what are you talking about? Well, I mean, you still are ahead of this sport and you're ahead of this sport. And you're ahead. And I'm like, well, fellas, I'm just doing that because I don't want people to feel like, I've elevated myself above them. But Coach, in doing that, we don't get a chance to do what you did, to develop the way you got to develop. And I learned a valuable lesson there that, in my efforts to do a good thing, I really wasn't doing a good thing for my staff. I wasn't giving them the opportunity. I wasn't empowering them. I think that one of the most, powerful things that leaders do is empower the people around you, empower your staff, empower your athletes to make good decisions, give them the tools to do the things that they need to do. And so, I feel like there's a lot of ways to answer that question and we could, drill down deep. But I think the overarching thing that I try to do with my staff is to allow them to feel the same thing that I get to feel. And that is that ownership and then that sense of accomplishment when somebody does something under your direct leadership.
Coach Decree.
Coach, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, sir. So thank you. Wanted to ask, staying on the human element, within our experiences as strength coaches, I think a lot of people don't understand the connection that we have with our athletes on the many layers that we have that connection. Could you speak on that, your connection and your staff's connection to the athletes that you're able to work with and how that relates to keeping those kids motivated when they have so many different outside influences, or if they do come from, let's say, less than ideal circumstances, because a lot of times we have kids that have come in from certain environments, and this is their opportunity to be able to not just change their lives, but even their families' lives, possibly even be the first person in their family to attend college or graduate. So I'd really like to get your perspective on that.
Well, I think that's a great question, and it's you said that it was a privilege to be on this today with me. I want you to know it's a privilege to be on here with you, and appreciate your time. I think that when we're talking, really what we're getting down to is talking about relationships, and I think that trust, is something that you earn, not something that you ask for. And I think that is so important to develop that. And you say, okay, well, how do you go about doing that? I think, I read this in one of my leadership books. It said that there's 4 qualities that that anyone who's willing to follow you wants to know about you. So when I'm developing relationships with athletes that are coming from all kinds of different backgrounds and knowing what's on the line, like you said, I mean, life-changing things. First of all, anytime anybody fulfills their goals and dreams, that's life-changing. And then when there's a financial attachment to that, that literally could change generations, not just their life, but generations, you got to work hard at figuring out how you're going to develop that relationship so that you can do what we talked about earlier, and that's really empower them, you know? And so the 4 things were, number 1, you need to be honest. If you want someone to follow you, they need to know that you're honest. And then number 2 is to be competent. And then 3 is inspirational. And then 4 is forward looking. So, you know, when you're developing that relationship with an individual, knowing that you're going to be honest with them, you know, I tell my athletes all the time, I'm willing not to be liked in order to be loved. Because I think that, you know, people that are liked, want to be liked, are going to tell you what you want to hear all the time. People that truly want to be loved, you know, we don't use that word a lot, you know, in strength and conditioning. There's so many, you know, different definitions of that, but I think it's a powerful word, and it's truth about in a relationship. People that want to be loved are willing to tell you what you don't want to hear, because it's what you need to hear in that moment in order to get you truly where you want to go. I mean, you got to, you know, entrust somebody. I say on my recruiting weekends, you know, I want you to know that if you give me this opportunity, I'm going to stand guard of your goals and dreams. And that might mean on any particular day that I'm unpopular, that I'm not exactly who you want to hear from, because I'm going to tell you the truth. But at the end of the day, when they know that you truly care, that you are truly committed to them for the right reasons, that you do love them, that it's not out of a position of arrogance or a position of power, but it's from a position of, I want what's best for you. I don't want you to waste this opportunity. I want you to be able to do all the things. You know, I tell them, you know, the scouts come in and they have conversations with me, and the scouts are extremely intelligent, and they know what to look for. And they're going to say to me, you know, hey, you know, what kind of a squatter is he? He doesn't look like he's a very good, you know, he looks more like he's a waist bender than a knee bender. You know, they're going to ask me, you know, what's he like in the weight room? Can you trust him, or do you have to have somebody always watching out? So I have this conversation with them so that they understand that I'm not going to make up their talk about what I say to a scout. They're going to make that talk up over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. And when they know that you're going to be honest with them, which means they know that you're going to be honest with the people that are asking about them, and they can count on that, then that drives that relationship. It's from a foundation of a good heart with good intentions, driven by honesty and truth. And I think that, you know, that is the cornerstone and foundation of any relationship. And you have to establish with an athlete. And that's only going to happen, like I said, trust is something you earn, not something you ask for. But then the other thing, once you develop that component, I think that component, you know, is something that happens over time. But they're not going to listen to you, even if they trust you in terms of you being a good dude, if you're not good at what you do. If you're not really good at what you do, and that's where those stories, you know, strength coaches get into spouting their resume sometimes. And some people say, well, why do they feel the need to do that? They don't feel the need to do that for themselves. Their need to do that is that they're trying to give people an understanding of what they're capable of if that individual will really, truly give themselves. This is what has happened in the past, and this is what can happen for you. Just want you to know that it has happened. It has been a good plan. It has been a good process. And here's where it's led different guys and different female athletes to. This is what they've been able to accomplish. So the resume thing is not for a strength conditioning coach to feel better about themselves, but it's to get that buy-in, because competency and being great at what you do is so important. And then obviously, you know, you got to be somebody that can speak their language. You got to be able to inspire them. You got to be able to somebody that, you know, can get them going and, you know, meet them where they're at. And, we have two signs in our weight room, standard over feelings. And the standard sign is green and the feeling sign is red. And we literally have them touch those signs. Because if they walk in and they're in their feelings, they need to be honest about that, because then they need to get out of their feelings, because the weight room is a standard. It's a feelings-free zone. It ain't about feelings. It's about facts. It's about business. It's about getting a job done, and getting them to understand that you're not, this isn't about you trying to punk them or hurt their feelings or lord your authority. No. Everything that's being stated is in the best interest of you. It's to elicit the response of you being great, of you not wasting a minute, of you not looking back and say, if I would have. Never, ever, ever do I want an athlete to say, if I would have done this or if I would have done that. I'm going to do everything I can. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether I'm liked on a given day. I just want to be loved at the end of the journey. I want them to know, you know what? He was willing for me to be mad at him. He was willing to say tough things to me that I needed to hear. But he was also the same guy that was jumping up and down. We have a cowbell in our weight room. Anytime somebody hits a PR, we stop and we announce it to the whole room, PR, and we clap. And John Maxwell talks about, if you want to develop a winning culture and a culture of success, you better celebrate the small victories along the way. And so there's going to be both sides of it. And I'm going to be passionate either way. So I think that inspiration, those four things, when you really look at it, is he forward-looking? Is he honest? Is he competent? And is he inspirational? When you're talking about somebody walking into a room that you have no pre-existing relationship with, and they may not have had the best experience with authority figures in the past, and they may have been let down and disappointed, and everything that they walk in there with doesn't facilitate them instantly buying into what you're doing, but so much hangs in the balances of that. I just think if you really wrap your mind around those four principles that I just spoke about, gives you a great chance. I'll close this question with this story. Michael Orr, had the opportunity to coach him at Ole Miss, and we came in there at the end of his junior year, beginning obviously of his senior year, and they were trying to decide whether or not he was going to come out early. And so as we changed staffs, the Tuies who adopted him interviewed the head football coach, the academic people, and then myself. And I was curious as to why they wanted to interview me. And they said that there was, one thing that he was really struggling with in terms of his combine numbers. And they asked me, if I felt like that I could help that. And I told them that I could, but I understood that trust was something you have to earn, not something you ask for. But if they give me a chance, I promise I won't let them down. And in the development of that one area of his physical development, he just blossomed and grew. And he became, my wife would tell you, he became the biggest endorser of Coach Decker that I've ever had in my career. But that's walking into a situation where, he ends up being a first round, and that's generation changing money, and didn't know me from Adam, and the family that had, brought him in and adopted him didn't know me either. And so here's a guy who's coming from a background of, you would obviously say that he didn't come from a background of trust. That, he's walking the streets, people had let him down a bunch, but here's a guy who gave me that chance. And I share that story because when other athletes are saying, I don't know, is this guy for real, or is he just a used car salesman? Is he just sound good and all hyped up and pepped up on recruiting day? When I share that story that Michael gave me that opportunity, and then what we did with it together is one of those stories that I get to use to really help speed up that process of that trust in that relationship.
Coach, that's beautifully said. So real quick, based off of the questions I gave you, this is important because I want to describe kind of where we're at and really in the tactical setting. And in some ways, depending on the university you're at, it might be. So our soldiers that we work with, it's on a voluntary basis. So they're not required. It's not in a standard setting at the FBS level where you better be there. your training, it's your scholarship, all the things happen. And I know you've probably been in those situations before, especially when you first started, when parts of the summer were voluntary. So in that, I think into that question, we have to continue to not only cultivate a great culture to really invite our athletes in, but two, we have to continuously upgrade the facilities and what we have to offer. Obviously, foundationally, we still stick to our principles and our philosophy. It's ground-based movements, multi-joint, all the things we do. But you want to have spinners on things. You got to. You got to have that buy-in. And I think in that, I call those innovative ideas. And I think really in those ideas, what I've found is if it gives that individual great direct feedback of where they're at, who they are as an athlete, that really helps. But still trying to figure out, there is no perfect system. There is no perfect formula, but obviously people have had a lot of success in their systems. So I want to know if you can kind of expound upon how do you encourage innovative ideas with your players, with your staff, and what are some of those ideas you've done? Like, and one I do know personally is that you guys use VBT training. You're one of the first universities really as a whole to use it at the collegiate level. So consistently. So I think I'm really interested to hear your take on that, Coach.
Well, it's such a, broad question that when I looked at that, I was like, how do you harness that, that and kind of get it into something that people could really take and digest and use. I think from an innovation standpoint, we walked into to New Mexico State. They had a great room, but it hadn't been touched in about 22 years, and so first thing I said was I was going to do everything I could to make this job, just like how we operated at Arkansas and how we operated at Ole Miss, and I'm going to talk about the 4 qualities that people want to have in an individual that they're willing to follow. I mean, I'm going to continue to talk about that today because as I was going through these questions and I was looking at, the things that you were going to ask me, I just felt like those 4 things really centered and we're at the heart of answering a lot of those things. And I think that when people are walking away, John Maxwell wrote a book called Everyone Communicates, but Few Connect. And I think that it's more about walking away from today's conversation with, something that you can really hold on to. And one of those qualities that I mentioned as I was answering the earlier question was, being forward thinking. And so, we've had elite form technology in our weight room for the last, 5 years. And talking to different individuals, matter of fact, we even talked with myself and my top assistant, Zach Witherspoon. We were asked by Elite Form to be their guest speakers at the convention to talk about how Elite Form worked. And, instead of doing it themselves, they picked us. So I'm very proud of, being able to involve those kind of things. But really, I use that as a point of illustration as to, some of the things that we have here. We have Polar, we have Elite, we just purchased 1080 Motion. We've got the vision goggle training. So, from our technology standpoint, I mean, we really are operating here at a pretty high level. But, people could say, okay, well, Coach, I don't have those things. You're kind of pointing to being innovative to, strictly to technology and things you can purchase. And there's, with everybody, there's budget limitations. I'm at New Mexico State University. I mean, our football staff is the, least paid football staff, in the country. So, it's not like money abounds at New Mexico State University. So I don't want anybody to, to think that, but I think that the thing that drives that, the thing that drove Polar, the thing that has driven the 1080 Motion, the thing that drove me with the vision training is not so much me and being the leader in and of itself. the high performance model is talked about a lot, the high performance model within athletic departments. And and I know that the services, y'all have more of the high performance model than we do in terms of sports psychology and sports nutrition and sports medicine and of course you guys in sports performance. And so you have all those things. And when I'm hiring people as strength coaches, I mean, to be on my staff, I always tell them, if you can't coach on the floor, you can't have a seat at the table. You got to be able to get it done on the floor. You got to be able to motivate. You got to be able to coach. Those are the things that you got to be able to do. But in my interview process, I'm always asking them, what in terms of sports performance or in performance in and of itself, what really is your niche? What are you attracted to? Is it the science side of things? Is it nutrition? Is it technology? I just had a gentleman leave my staff after being with me for 4 years who had his master's degree in sports psychology. So what is it that drives you? And so when you're hiring those kind of niches that come to the table and say, man, nutrition's really my area, or science is really my area, or technology, and you get them around the table and you create a safe space where they can, kind of take the lead and say, Coach, do you think we could take a look at this? Or you think we could do this? Or you think it's like, you're making yourself so much better because of what you brought to the table. It's not that you have to be innovative. It's that you bring innovation to the table because you have all these minds around you that they're, I've got a director of exercise prescription that, he's a science geek, man. He loves science, he just loves it. And so, when we're having our high performance meeting, which we have once a week, and we go around to the different areas, I mean, they're championing their cause. I mean, they're pushing you, to develop in those areas. So, I think that if I really want to answer the question honestly, that I can't take a lot of credit for that. That it's the hiring practices that I've been able to develop from the people that have helped me over the years develop in those particular areas of leadership, and know that you got to surround yourself with people that are going to push you and help you. And then when you're looking at those 4 qualities, you're not going to always prop up forward thinking with yourself. And you got to have that around you. So we can run around the question and chase rabbits. I want to make sure that I stay on point. Is there anything else, Justin, that you want me to hit on that?
No, I think you're pretty thorough on everything. You hit it home pretty well, Coach. I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to let Coach agree after that. How do you, when I say your personal style, and I ask that, describe that,
yeah.
What I mean by that is your coaching style. Like, what is it? Everybody has a certain coaching style, and has it changed over the years? Again, I like asking layered questions because people think some people are always the same, and it's not. You might become wiser and more analytical on how you look at things. Like when I first got into it, I was a screamer. I was the guy that was doing the stupid jumping jacks and all the things. And as I've progressed through it, I still got the juice. I still got the energy if I need to use it. But now first I take a step back. I look at the room. I analyze the room. I know and try to understand my athletes and who and how they're going to respond. Because some won't respond to the juice. Some will respond. Some come up and having a conversation with them. And just like you said earlier, between your red and green, and knowing if they're in their feelings for the day or they're ready to really work. So I think that's really changed for me over the years. For me personally, my coaching style, I want to kind of hear you, Coach.
In thinking about this, I actually asked my staff to help me so that I would be honest, because that's one of the things that people look for is that honesty and that truthfulness, and so being genuine. So the first thing, I think that if you ask one of my staff guys, what is his style, I think the very first thing they would say is that I'm extremely demanding. When I said, I don't know that I should say that because that can come across as negative. He's just so hard, and is that is he just that badge of honor that he wants to say that I'm so demanding? I have to use the word demanding because it's the best word that describes it. But I think that the way I explain it, and that is that I take that vow serious. when I tell those guys that if they give me the chance to be a part of their goals and dreams and that I won't let them down, I take that serious. So the only way I know how to get that done is and you hear this from Coach Saban all the time, the standard. I've always used that phrase in my, manuals and stuff for my staff. And, the players would tell you, Coach Deck's always saying, the standard is what the standard is. And so I thought to myself one day, that sounds good. But my wife has always asked me, like, you say stuff when you talk sometimes, but what does it mean? I mean, it just sounds good to hear you say that, And so I define for my staff and the players that the standard is excellence in every detail of every action. So if my staff is out there coaching and they want to know what I'm looking for excellence in every detail of every action. Does that mean perfection? No. That just means the best they can coach in that moment in every detail of what you're asking them to do, which is leading obviously to the actions. And my demand is because I want my staff to leave me as better coaches and pursue their career and achieve those things. I want the athletes to be able to achieve the thing. So it's out of a belief and a hope and a care. And the demand is that, not because I'm just going to have this authority and this position. As we know, when John Maxwell talks about leadership, positional leadership is the lowest level of leadership.
Still there? Guess someone's calling him.
It says that there you go.
We lost you for a second.
Yeah. One of my staff guys decided that he wanted to give me a call right in the middle of this talk. But anyways, this Harvard study that I read, I thought it was interesting that they did a study on positive to negative statements and negative statements. And they found that the best ratio, the highest performers came out of a ratio of 1 to 5. For every one negative thing you said, you better follow it up that day with 5 positive things. Anything less leaves the athlete feeling less about themselves. Anything more can give them kind of a blown up opinion of themselves. And then don't ever be in the 3-to-1 category, which led to the lowest performers, which is 3 negatives followed up by only 1 positive. And, I started in this business in 1989. And, looking back, I don't know that I was being taught those things as a coach, being taught, the power of all of that. I believe that people believed that. I just don't think that we as coaches were, it was about numbers. It was a numbers driven thing. How many 400-pound benches and 500-pound squats and 300-pound cleaners, and how many 40s do you have and 4.4 or better, and how many 30-inch vertical jump play, and all, it was a lot of numbers. And that's what was driving performance, was these numbers that you have 25 guys benching 400 and this and all that kind of stuff. And I believe that our business has so evolved to, prehab is as important as, as bench squat and power clean, and as we've, developed over the years, our athletes are so much more educated to what they do and what we do. And we so much more have the why question. And at times, because of the different generations and how they're raised, when you're raised in a generation where they don't give out trophies for winning, and everybody gets a trophy and everybody gets a gold standard and a gold star. You better figure out a way to deal with that generation. And I do think that study is very interesting. It's something I teach my staff, and it's something that, man, if I jump a guy and if I get after him, I'm hoping that he understands the heart that I'm coming with, and that is that I love him, I care about him or her, and want them to be great. But at the same time, I'm doing a little self-check. Hey, that is so much better. That is so much better. That's what I knew you could do. See, that's that greatness coming out. I'm really checking myself to make sure that I'm following that up with why I said it. And so I think that's important in terms of, style. When you talk about being demanding, there's got to be that balance. And then that leads me into what I said earlier. If you want a culture of winning, you better celebrate the small victories along the way. And so that's why we have the cowbell. That's why we quiet things down, give the 3 claps, that we announce the person's name when they hit a PR, those kind of things. So, that's a part of my style. I've talked about the honesty thing, the truthfulness, not being, willing to not be liked in order to be loved. And I think that, creating a safe space for your staff, that, when things are going right, it's the window in the mirror philosophy. When things are going right, you're looking out the window and you're giving everybody credit outside. And when things are not going right, that you're looking in the mirror and you're pointing the finger and you're taking that ownership, that's on you. It's not, I confess it's somebody else's fault. So from a leadership standpoint, and you're talking about my style, I want to create a safe space for not only my athletes to operate in, but also my staff. My staff says that I like to be micro-informed, that I don't micromanage. A book that I read early in my career called Gung Ho talked about the spirit of the squirrel, the way of the beaver, and the gift of the goose. And the way of the beaver is something that I use with my staff. And that is, there's no beaver out there directing traffic about where to put the sticks to build the dam. It talked about in the book, it's figure it out, find a way and fix it, which means be yourself. And, that's what I want my staff to be, is themselves. I read this. I think it's a cool statement. If your staff cannot have a vigorous debate and then go out for lunch, you're not getting the best that your staff has to offer. And I think that, letting my staff know that, here's where I want you to get to, here's what I want you to do, but you got to figure it out, find a way and fix it. Now I'll help you with that. We can have conversations about that, but I want you to be you, because that's what's genuine and that's what's real and that's what's going to accomplish things. And then the last thing that I would say that, and none of us on this call today, or anyone that listens, could talk about their personal style without thinking about the people that invested in that style. And, my wife, she was kind of interested in going and seeing that movie. I'm drawing a blank now. Mr. Rogers, Won't You Be My Neighbor? So we went to see that, and, I didn't think it was going to be the best movie I ever saw or anything like that, but, she was interested in it. So we went to see it, and I was glad that I did, because one of the things, if you saw the movie, that it talks about in there, or actually does in the movie, is the question is posed over lunch prior to them eating. And that is, have you ever stopped to think about who made you you? Have you ever stopped to think about or made a list of people that made you you? And he said, Tom Hanks said, we're going to take the next 60 seconds and we're not going to talk, and we're just going to think. And you can see the rest of the restaurant kind of listening in. And we're going to take the next 60 seconds and just go through a mental checklist of who made you you. And, I thought that in answering this question, for anyone that's listening to this recording, that we take a moment and really reflect on who made us who we are, and maybe taking the opportunity to go back and let them know, because they were the ones that were being honest with us. They were the ones that were great at what they were doing so that we could be great at word, and it's that whole, look back and take a moment and really reflect. And so, I made a list, of people in my life, in terms of just my strength and conditioning. Coach Stuckey was my mentor. Al Miller, Al Vermeil, Houston Nutt, and Doug Martin, are the 2 head football coaches I've worked for. Joe Ferguson, longtime NFL quarterback, was a really guiding force. Kelly McGregor, who was the CEO and president of the Colorado Rockies, who passed 10 years ago, was huge in driving me into leadership. Frank Broyles, one of the most powerful ADs that ever lived. Rob Glass has invested in me. Jimmy Ratcliffe, Lance Walker, Michael Johnson, Wallace Spearman, Tyson Gay, who are the 2 fastest guys on the planet until Usain Bolt came on the scene. I had the opportunity to be around them for about 6 years. So, that's just a short list, and everybody has a list, but I think it's important to have a list, write the list down, and then reflect back on that, because it drives you. Do you want to be on somebody's list? Are you the guy that is leading in a manner that's putting yourself on somebody else's list, that you're somebody that they would say, you're part of what made me me.
Coach Cree.
Coach, just a really quick question. I know time is starting to come to an end. I want to be brief and respect your time. How have you and your staff been able to adapt to this pandemic situation with your athletes and maintaining those relationships, and as well as, you know, the hope that your guys and gals, athletes, have been continuing their training? I know that that's going to be a huge challenge coming forward in the hopeful upcoming athletics season.
So everybody, obviously, because we're on Zoom today, we should give Zoom a shout out. Everybody's become pretty, well acquainted with Zoom. And so, I reached out. One of the things that, one of the questions that I don't know if we're going to get to today, but, and talking about, what continues to inspire you to, get better and all those kind of things. One of the things that I think is important, is to reach out to others, go visit other programs, have other experts come into your particular situation. I was taught that kind of in the middle of my career. Instead of going always visiting somebody, have them come to you when they're not going to be distracted, and they can say, okay, here's what they have to work with. Here's the equipment and tools they have to work with. How could what I'm trying to get them to understand and know and maybe bring to the table, how could that actually work in their setting? And so in doing that, I've tried to do that during this time, and I've reached out to several people and to see what they're doing. And I believe, for the first time in my career, that everybody's kind of on equal footing. It doesn't matter, how much money you have or how big your weight room is when you can't get in it, and, you can't personally train your people and use that stuff. So one of the motivations and things that I've been telling our athletes is the first time in my career, whether you're at the top of the food chain in terms of finances and facilities, or at the bottom of the food chain in terms of finances, for the first time, everybody's on equal footing. I mean, you're doing a body weight workout, you're doing a band workout, you're doing a makeshift weight room workout. You can't get access to, health clubs and gyms, and, strength coaches can't get into their facilities, and, they can't train their athletes and all that kind of stuff. So literally everybody's somewhat on equal footing. And so I've used that, for us, because financially we're not on equal footing with everybody else. And so, I really tried to use that to help motivate our kids to say, look, man, we can take a step and really kind of close the gap. And where I've done that is on the Zoom calls, as everybody's real familiar with, staff, football staff is having Zoom meetings with their players. And I just requested that I would be on one call a week with the position coach, with their players. And then I just point blanked them. I get on there. Talk, hey, how are you? Healthy? Are you doing good? Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything you need? Can I, send you some supplements? Can I, but this, that, and other, take care of that first. And then I would just point blank them. Are you doing every rep of every set of the workout we sent you? Are you following the video? Are you doing the conditioning? Are you, that kind of deal? And initially it was interesting because, and I was thankful for it, but they were so honest. Now I'm doing some push-ups and sit-ups. That's about it, And it was like, okay, here's the deal. We're not on spring break. Okay. This is a time where, we have to train where we would normally be training. And so, you could see that there was a little bit of shift in the fact that this wasn't vacation. And then the other thing was being able to look on the screen like I'm looking at you and I'm looking at Justin and I'm looking you straight in the eye best I can and saying, did you do every rep of every set? Did you do every rep of every set? That's all I'm asking. Be honest with me. Yeah, well, Coach, I only got 3 days of conditioning in this week. I didn't do 4. I only got a couple days of the workout. Well, when you did do the workout, did you do every rep of every set? Well, yeah, I did. No. Be honest. And so then you saw that change to the dialogue of them beat me to the punch. Coach, I've been doing every rep of every set and then some. Here's what I've been doing this week. and so you saw that kind of shift. And I think, could they be, I don't want to say anybody that's listening to this say, well, you think they're constantly telling him the truth? I mean, is he, he ain't that dumb. But I think it's hard to look somebody in the eye and say, I'm doing every rep of every set when you're not. I just think that's hard to do. I don't care how you, what type of character and integrity you have as an individual. I just think that's hard to do, especially when your position coach is on the call, your strength coach is on the call, and your teammates are on the call, and you're point blanking each guy. Okay, Justin, I need your eyes here, Justin. I need your eyes. All right, are you doing every rep of every set? And then when they would that conversation would change, and they would start saying, "Yeah, I've been doing this. I've been doing this." And when they would be honest and say, "No, I only got 3 instead of 4," I would be, man, I appreciate your honesty. I'd so much rather know the truth than for you to tell me what I just want to hear or what this coach wants to hear. I think, giving them some security that we were there for them, that we would, send them supplements, that, we tried to get band packs out to guys that, didn't have any type of training that they could have any access to weights and those kind of things, because those body weight workouts start getting old. And I think them knowing that, and then just that point blank transparency with their teammates and their coaches, I'm hoping when they get back that, that we're hitting on all cylinders the best we can. And then I wanted to bring this up because I knew you guys were going to ask me about, how we were going to handle this. We've put together, a plan within the university and within the athletic department of how our athletes will come back. Like, what does a day look like? And I'm not going to bore you with that. We just had a meeting about it yesterday, actually. But the thing I'm excited about from a strength and conditioning standpoint is the NCAA really challenged, the CSCCA and the NSCA to come up with some really, science-based specific things when an athlete comes off of a break in that transition period of return to training. And in June of last year, that joint document was published in the NSCA journal, and talks about the protocol for conditioning returning athletes that have been in your program, conditioning new athletes that you've never trained before. And then, from a strength training standpoint, there's those protocols now that are in place that are very, very specific. They're not just general guidelines, but they're very specific things. And anybody that's interested in knowing more about that, I spoke on it, and it's part of our virtual convention with the CSCCA. It's going to be on their website, available to anybody. You can go to the NSCA journal, the June issue of last year, and the articles in there that outlines that protocol. But the exciting thing is like tomorrow morning, I'm going to be on the call with the Corey Stringer Institute, and they're talking about using this protocol as a document that they're going to support and back, and they want to know more about it before they put their backing behind it. But I've been on several calls over the last couple of weeks with conference committees that are trying to figure out how to bring their athletes back, and they're using this document as a foundation once the athlete gets back on campus, and you go through all the how are they going to stay safe in the social distancing. But then once they actually get in the weight room, what does that look like? And that's where those protocols really pick up and take off. And I'm just so proud of the strength and conditioning coaches, because this came out of 2 national organizations that came together. We have our differences, but we came together and said, what's the best thing for our athletes? And what are some very specific things that we can do to keep our athletes safe? And I think that the protocol gives strength coaches ownership. I think it gives them protection to not be pressed into making decisions that they don't really want to make about how fast they're bringing an athlete back. And then it gives us an accountability so that when people are trying to point the finger at strength coaches, that we can say, no, we followed this. We did this, this, and this. I mean, that's what we did. That's best practices within the industry. So I'm really excited about that. I think we're positioned really well. Obviously we all hate this pandemic and what it's done to our country and the death that we've experienced, and the sadness and the sorrow. But the one thing from a strength and conditioning standpoint that has come out of this is that this protocol has really been pushed to the forefront because phases and protocols have become a part of our conversation in this world. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And so everybody's more receptive to protocols. And I think initially strength coaches were like, I don't need a protocol to tell me how to be a strength coach. But now it's being readily received because it's a part of the dialogue that has become a part of our country and the way that we talk.
Coach, I think last piece of this platform, what I always like to do is give you an opportunity to share anything you feel like today we haven't covered, anything you feel like you want to share from your heart, anything you feel like you want to share that's essential for the listeners to hear. And obviously, because we ask these questions we thought of, but there's still certain pieces that you're very passionate about that we might have missed. So I think this is your opportunity for the next 10 minutes or so to kind of share you.
Okay, so there's a couple things that I wanted to share. We're talking about, creating a safe space for our staff. And, what does that look like? Given a practical example, before every football offseason, I bring the staff in, the whole staff, regardless, Olympic sport, and we sit around the room, and everybody knows that they're on equal footing, and we're throwing mud at the wall, and coming up with ideas, and we just fill the board with just ideas, and no idea is a bad idea, no idea is off limits. I mean, I create some guidelines about that, but we're throwing mud against the wall, and the only thing that I ask is that that you're able to defend what you present. And one of my staff guys told me that in 5 years he's been with me, he said he's never heard me say that idea just won't work, or just crush somebody and say, I can't believe you would think that. I can't believe that's the way you think. I can't believe, come on, man, that's elementary. He said, I've never heard you do anything but, edify and build up. And then, obviously, we can't use every idea, but everybody feels invested, with that. And so I think that's one practical way to really, give your staff the opportunity and empower them and for them to truly know that it is a safe space for them to grow. And we get a lot out of that. That was one thing, practical example that I wanted to share in terms of, just developing your staff. And then the second thing is that, and I got this from Lance Walker at MJP. It's anybody seen that game, that Plinko, where you drop the deal in and it Plinkos down, it falls into a slot. One of the things that we do with our program is that it's not, we don't say to staff, your idea won't work. It's where does your idea or exercise, where does it fall into place? For instance, one of our slots is speed. So within speed, is it linear or lateral? If it's linear, is it acceleration or max speed? If it's lateral, is it angular or change of direction? It's a plyometric. Is it a hop? Is it a jump? Is it a bound? If it's a strength exercise, is it a press? Is it a pull? Is it a squat? So we have these, this Plinko system where, it's constantly being, the system is constantly being added to, because none of it's challenging the system and saying, we got to change our system. It's, okay, where does it fit into our system? So it's a very receptive way of expanding your system and continuing to be creative and those kind of things. And then I'll close with this, and it's something that you and I spoke about the other day. And it's, when you have a system like that from a strength conditioning standpoint, and you're able to kind of get everything into a category so that it's usable. A lot of times we go to conventions and we read books and things, and we're like, we've got all this material, but what do we do with it? And I think from a strength conditioning standpoint, that system allows you to take a lot of information and make it applicable to your system. But the same thing, I think, goes, and I love the way you've attacked these conversations and these platforms. It's not been from, okay, what's your X's and O's? How do you cycle and all those kind of things? But it's been more about culture and leadership and things that we don't normally sit down and break bread over. And one of the things that I've done, I've got a ton. I'm just really attracted to information about leadership and being a better leader and those kind of things. And during this pandemic, I've sat down and I've tried to organize, what is my leadership model? What does that look like? And I was trying to harness, all this information that I'd taken notes on, these books that I've read and all that kind of stuff. And I narrowed it down to 4 questions. And that is, number one, why? You're answering, why do you do what you do? Why are you a strength and conditioning coach? Why do you want to be a great leader? What is driving you? What is the why that's driving you? And so that's one question, and that's one, bay of information. And then who are you as a leader? What type of leader are you? Today we talked about your personal style, but what type of leader are you? And when you take a look at that, John Maxwell, and I've quoted him several times today, but he says, if you think you're a leader and you turn around, nobody's following you, you're just out for a walk. So what type, who are you as a leader? How do you want to be seen as a leader? Are you secure in what you're doing? So who you need to, why, and then who, and then what do you want to accomplish? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Where are you trying to go? Right. And then how are you going to get there? So it's the why, it's the who, it's the what, and the how. And I just think that, as you're growing as a leader and as you're growing as a strength coach, if you have places to put that information, it's just like experience. People say that, experience is the best teacher. Well, only if you allow experience to be a teacher, meaning only if you stop and allow that to affect your next decision. But if you're just going from event to event and season to season and year to year, and you're never really allowing that experience to influence your decisions, then it's really not the best teacher. And so I think the same thing's true, that we have this thirst for knowledge and this hunger for knowledge and this hunger to stay on the cutting edge and all that kind of stuff, which I think is great. But what are you doing it? How are you packaging it so that it really affects your day in, day out behavior and where you're trying to go and what you're trying to accomplish?
One point I want to make that I thought you said beautifully, which I wish more coaches would understand and would understand from a staff's cultivating standpoint, meaning how they progress as a staff, how they're open, is creating the safe space. I think that's what you've said today, Coach. I do. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butt. I promise you. You've said things very beautifully, but I think probably from a staff standpoint, from just a culture within the staff, we forget that. We forget that safe space, meaning, is this a conducive atmosphere where we can grow together? When we always say, always throughout my years of being in football and college athletics, everybody says family, family, family. Well, they really don't know what the hell that means if they can't do exactly what you say, which is the safe space, the positive compared to the negative. Like those, I think, those are what I call knowledge nugget pieces that I think are game changers. I'm a big Brene Brown fan. I think she's a huge impact in my life. First book I ever read from her is Dare to Lead. I think any coach should read it, understanding empathy, understanding courage, and cultivating that courage out of comfort, deciding not to be comfortable. Like these things I think are crucial, because then you can find out more about yourself. Like you said, your staff is willing to be constructive with you, not in a negative light, to make you better. These are small things that we just don't do. We just push forward and we think, we know the best thing to do, and we have to be on top and we have to sit on the throne. No, it's if you have a staff of 5 people, you have a staff of 2 people, you have a staff of 15 people, whatever, you want 15 people working for you. You want 5 or even 2 of you. You want everybody working at the same pace, at the same speed. In order to do that, I think that's to me today, that's what stuck out to me more beautifully than anything else you said, because I think that is where and why you've been successful, is because you got everybody working at the same pace. If that is the biggest truth I got today, is that, and I wanted to thank you for that, because I think that's a beautifully said, easily overlooked piece that so many people do overlook.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to say to you, you've always been a guy, we haven't over the years spent a ton of time on the phone, or, our paths haven't crossed a ton or anything like that. But one thing I want to encourage you with today is that every time I've ever been around you, when I walked away, I felt better about myself. You found a way to work into the conversation something that you respected or something that you valued or something. And, people like to be around people who make them feel better about themselves, and I just wanted to, encourage you with that and just thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And it's meant a lot to me. And I hope that, somebody can take something from this and help them. I feel like when people say, what was the conference like, or what was this like? Did you learn? If you walk away with one thing from a talk or a conference or, whatever, if you walk away with one thing that helps you be better, it was worth it. And, my hope today is that anybody that listens to this will at least walk away, with one thing that can help them be better. And I just want them to know that if they're ever around you, that they're going to walk away being better, because you're going to find a way to point out to them what you respect and what you value. And I think that is something that, that you've been blessed with, that the Lord is, just kind of giving you that gift of encouragement. And I just want to continue to be that way, because that you can't say that about everybody.
Right. No, again, I just want to thank you again, Coach. I've always, from outside in, like I said, from being a young buck in this field all the way up, always looked up for you because you have been very successful. And thank you for that. Thank you for today. Thank you for your time. Because yes, we have time now, but it's still precious. I'm not going to be stupid and say, hey, we have time to do this. Like, you do this. Like, you had to make your sacrifice to be here. I listened to an awesome devotion this morning. Pastor of Life Church was talking about, your priorities, and then you have everything else. Your priorities are the stones that you put into the bottle, and everything else is the sand. So you make that decision is, if you try to put the sand in and try to put the rocks in the bottle, it will never work. But you put the rocks in the bottle, your priorities, and then you put the sand in, it will work 100% of the time. And I think that's kind of in this time frame is, how do we utilize it? Do we see it that way? Are we putting the rocks in every day before the sand? So I know that this is somewhat of the sand, and I thank you for that. Thank you for that time, and best of luck, because I know we still don't know. We're still in the unknown. And you being in the same state as me, it's still the governor's shut down, so we don't know where. So best of luck with that. And definitely we'll look forward to the relationship we get to cultivate, being a couple hours down the road for you, and, catching a couple football games, hopefully this fall. We'll see how things work out. But otherwise, thanks, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.